Welcome to Da Nang. I'm here in November, which is also the monsoon season. It's quite wet, although it's not raining heavy. I got here last night and I went out, had a couple of beers, then went and checked out the Dragon Bridge, which is down the road. Took some photos of that. And today I'm going to go search the Lady Buddha statue and maybe Marble Mountain as well. And then later on today I'll be heading down to Hoi An, which has been affected by floods lately, so we'll see how it looks down there.
So in the morning I wanted to set out for Monkey Mountain, which has the Lady Buddha statue. I also wanted to check out Marble Mountain, which has the caves and a few sites. Now, I hadn't really planned on how I was going to do this. I think I was just going to get a cab, but I got approached by a solo tour guide. The company name is Easy Rider, and you pretty much jump on the back of a guy's motorbike and he takes you around and stops at sites like this beach and other sites along the way where you can check out some of the views and things that you wouldn't get if you were in a cab. So I recommend going the Easy Rider. However, it did rain and I did get a tiny bit wet. So there's that to consider. He does have raincoats for you to wear, so that was good. It cost me 800,000 Vietnamese dong, which equates to about 35 US dollars. I'm not sure where you're from, but you can work that out from there. So this is another way to check out Da Nang. And after these sites, he actually then took me to Hoi An. So that money covered all the different sites I wanted to see in Da Nang, and then he got me to my hotel in Hoi An. So all in all, I was fairly happy. And for $35, 4 hours of the guy's time, I think that's a pretty good deal. Now this here is Marble Mountain. I recommend checking it out on your way to Hoi An, or even if you're not going to Hoi An, you're just staying in Da Nang. It's great. I hope for you that it doesn't rain, because it did make things a little slippery and well, you just got wet. But it does have some great views like here, and it does have some cool caves that you can go in, and some of them have little holes and you can climb up through them and get to these sites. This here was the biggest cave and it was fairly impressive. It is very touristy and there are, tour groups going through. And that's a bit of a bummer, but I guess you could expect that sort of thing with sites like this. I spent 2 days and 2 nights in Hoi An, and I felt like I saw pretty much all of it in that time. Like, I don't think I needed a lot more time than that, although the place is so beautiful that I could have stayed there for a week and loved every day. But definitely 2 days is enough to see the place, unless you want to do things like travel out to some of the temples around the area or some of the other little towns down the coast.
So I'm at Reaching Out. It's a coffee and tea house. It's managed by the hearing and speech impaired. So everything you have to communicate is in sign language.
In Hoi An there are tailors, suit makers, shoemakers, everywhere. You'll see many shops. They all offer different prices, so it pays to shop around, but I highly recommend getting some shirts or suits made while you're in Hoi An. It's supposed to be cheaper than places like Hanoi as well. So yeah. While you're in Hoi An, you need to try some of the street food. I found this little shop. Well, I actually asked a lady where I could find a vegetarian meal because I am one. And she took me here. I was a little bit antsy at first, but once I ate it, it was delicious. And I'm still alive. I didn't get sick. In fact, the whole week I was in Vietnam, I didn't get sick, amazingly. But yeah, you got to try some street food. If you are a vegetarian or vegan and you're worried about having to find certain restaurants, don't worry, because I feel like every restaurant I went to had a page in their menu dedicated to plant-based diets. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I visited Vietnam in November, which is monsoon season down in the southern areas. So it rained a lot. It also flooded a lot. So keep this in mind when you decide to travel. I mean, Hoi An was wet, but then Hanoi had great weather. So something to think about. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I really enjoyed seeing the place flooded.
Hello again.
And it wasn't too crazy. Like, it did creep up into some of these restaurants that are along the river here. But it was cool. It gave the place a whole different feel, and I got some great opportunities to take photographs that I wouldn't get if the place wasn't flooding.
You could see the road there.
Obviously, it's not great for some of the restaurants because they have to clean
No,
up
not
every
so
morning. Because, like clockwork, in the evenings, the water would come over the banks and it would creep up the streets. But yeah, it made the place really interesting. On one of my days in Hoi An, I cycled out to Jack's Cat Cafe. It's about 15 minutes out of the main part of Hoi An. Now, Jack's Cat Cafe, it acts as a refuge for street cats. So they bring them in, they save them from the meat trade, and they nurse them back to health if they're injured, and they domesticate them and try and give them to a good home. It was really cool. There were about 50 or 60 cats in this one cafe. Just check out their opening hours though before you go. The next shot I show you has to be one of the highlights of my trip to Hoi An. So because it was flooded and the water had come up to the restaurants that were at the front of the river, you couldn't access them. But I wandered down this little alleyway, and at the end I found this vacant restaurant. The waiters were very surprised to see me, but I sat down and I had dinner and drinks, and where people would usually walk, there were boats sailing past. It was magical. If your hotel is a little bit out of the city, you may want to get a taxi into town. These green taxis here are the ones you'll want. They are metered and they charge you a fair rate. And keep an eye out for these ladies. It's not a scam, but what they'll do is they'll make you wear their hat and carry their fruit on your shoulder. And they'll take a photograph of you, and then they will make you buy some very overpriced fruit. So it's all fine, take the photo, it looks great, but don't pay too much for the fruit. Have an idea of what fruit costs and don't pay too much.
This is the restaurant I sat at last night at that table, and this here was all underwater, and there were boats going past where the footpath is now. After I left last night, the water came all the way into the restaurant up to the bar.
Thank you for watching, guys. I hope this video has served you in some way. Hoi An was truly an amazing city. I can't recommend it enough. But next up, I jump on a plane and I head to Hanoi and also see Ha Long Bay. So check out that video if you want some more ideas about what to do in Vietnam. Thanks, guys.